Hi, and thank you for joining us again for week 6 of the inaugural One Campus, One Book program. Today we're talking about partisanship and whether our government is broken. And so joining us today is Professor Keith Gaddie from the Political Science Department in the College of Arts and Sciences. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure to be here, Patrick.
So to begin with, is our government broken?
Our government's designed to be broken. Let's start with that. The government was designed to break up the influence of interest groups. It was designed to break up power. It was designed to force people to compromise and negotiate. It was not meant to be put together and to be efficient. And the problem we've run into now is that it's so well broken that nothing is able to change, and important problems don't get addressed. We won't demonstrate the filibuster here because the land speed record for filibuster is 24 hours. But a filibuster in a nutshell is a speech by one or more lawmakers where they attempt to control the floor of the legislative chamber and they don't give it up. It's designed to shut down any progress in the legislative process, okay? The filibuster exists in the U.S. Senate because of basically a procedural mistake that was made by Vice President Aaron Burr. And in creating this thing, which allows someone to hold the floor so long as they don't sit down or yield the floor, we've created an ability for the minority to basically shut down debate over things they don't want to see happen. Now, historically, the filibuster was basically designed really and used to defend slavery, okay? So a minority of states and their senators could get together and use extended debate to prevent legislation from moving forward that would, for example, lead to a repeal of the Fugitive Slave Act, okay? After the Civil War, and especially moving into the early 20th century, the filibuster really came into its prime. It was used by Southerners to stop what are called force bills, bills that would have allowed the national government to go into Dixie and deal with segregation and racial discrimination and racial oppression. The Senate has always had an ability to stop filibusters, a thing called the cloture rule. But the problem is you need an exceptionally large number of senators to invoke that. The thing is, it used to be the filibuster was rarely deployed. Okay, it was sort of like nuclear weapons. You didn't use it unless you absolutely had to. Well, now what happens is, if you have 41 senators who don't want to see a bill move, they will sign a statement saying, if this legislation is brought to the floor, we intend to filibuster it. And with 41 senators, you can stop debate cold in its track, and you can stop a cloture motion. So what happens is about 70% of all legislation that gets posed is threatened with filibuster. And the problem is, if we had a small federal government and we didn't have to have a government that was deeply entwined with our economy, this wouldn't be a problem. But in terms of doing things to innovate, in terms of modernizing our economy, our regulatory regime, healthcare system, the filibuster gets in the way, okay? It stops us from fixing things that are broken because national government accounts for roughly a fifth of the national economy. So if you have a fifth of the national economy being badly governed, badly managed, and you're taking away the ability to fix this thing, you create larger problems in society. The Tea Party is a symptom, okay? The Tea Party, we've seen this thing before, okay? We saw nativism, we saw know-nothingism, we saw the America First movement. You know, we've seen these things. And the Tea Party in the United States is actually not that different from the One Nation movement in Australia or New Zealand, okay? Which is a anti-Aboriginal, pro-Anglo, pro-Western values political movement, okay? The Tea Party we've always had these folks, and they have finally found some resonance and have enough numbers that they can put a scare into one of the political parties. And it forces some lawmakers to make use of tools like the filibuster to stop progress. But if it wasn't the Tea Party, it'd be something else. But reactionary elements, conservative elements that don't want to see change in progress, have often used filibuster, have often used procedural rules to stop necessary progress from happening. The media can't help itself, okay? Media fragmentation, the creation of these media silos where you have multiple broadcast channels, thousands of broadcast channels, interactive media, new media, You can't, everybody wishes to have back Walter Cronkite, right? And if anybody here that doesn't know who's watching this, Walter Cronkite's first broadcast job was at WKY Radio in Oklahoma City, and he was the voice of the OU Sooners, okay? And he went on to become the voice of America. He was one of three voices. Everybody got the same news through the same means through three different old white guys. You have a much more diverse media now, so people can pick the media and the content they want. It's not the media's fault that people are using their market options to get at what they want. When you have constrained few media sources, we have a word for that. It's called propaganda, okay? We need a diversity of media sources. They can't help it that consumers are going to consume media that's available. It can't be helped. The problem's us. Well, in the long term, one thing that I think that Lutz actually gets completely right is that the Republican Party is engaged in slow motion suicide if it continues on its current track. That if you look at a place like Texas, it's going down a road that had gone down previously in California, which is Republican parties pursue nativist and isolationist policies, or policies that offend minorities, offend immigrants, offend women. They're not making more and more white men, they're making fewer and fewer of them. And the demographic trends all over the country, even in a place like Oklahoma, 1 in 2 citizen Oklahomans under the age of 18 is either an Indian, an Asian, an African American, or a Hispanic. And that's the future of America. By 2050, half the country will be not white. And you can't build a political movement for the future. You can't have an ideological movement for the future that is too deeply infused in race. The Republican Party's base impedes its ability to engage in outreach, to build a vibrant new conservative movement. They get candidates. I mean, so they'll get a Marco Rubio, they'll get a Ted Cruz, but they don't get the votes. Yeah. And if you don't get the votes in the long run, you don't win. Demographics are very bad for the Republicans in the future, and the problem is they're reacting to demographics in the wrong way now. And that is actually where the Tea Party does come into play. He assumes that government has the capacity to deal with the problem, okay? And the real problem exists back in the bureaucracy, in part. It exists in the education system, in part. But it also exists in our mindset, which is that we need to quit thinking of ourselves as having half the GDP in the world. We need to think about how we fit into a broader community of nations where we still have the largest, most vibrant economy in the world. Even if the Chinese economy is numerically larger, there are 4 times as many people in China, okay? We are by and far the most prosperous, innovative country on earth. We just have to figure out how to make that innovation perpetual, okay? Actually, a former professor at OU called Don Cash wrote a book about this years ago, Perpetual Innovation. And that's what we have to imagine. And that means we have to reimagine federalism, we do have to reimagine the economic regulatory regime, and we have to think more as a nation and less as a federation.
Well, thank you so much for your comments, and thank you guys for once again watching this video. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again next week.